Captain Patnaik, thank you so much for giving us your time. We just wanted to learn a little bit more about your experiences of actually flying into Wuhan, getting back Indians and other international nationals, as well as giving medical equipment to China itself. Could you lead us through, Group Captain, the aim and the planning of the operation?
Thank you, Amitabh. The aim for this medical relief mission to Wuhan, China, was twofold. Firstly, was to provide China with some medical supplies, which would bolster their efforts in controlling the outbreak of the coronavirus at that time. The mission was carried out on the 26th of Feb 2020. The secondary and more important aim of the mission was to evacuate Indian nationals and nationals of foreign friendly countries from the corona zone, that is the epicenter of the corona outbreak from Wuhan.
Yeah. When you're talking about the planning again, now this is a multi-nodal, multi-ministerial involvement apart from the armed forces, the Air Force itself.
I agree. The agencies that were involved in the planning and execution of the mission was huge. The Ministry of External Affairs, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, the Director General Armed Forces Medical Services, the Airport Authority of India. We also interacted with the Air India pilots and the other crew of Air India who had taken a similar mission to Wuhan earlier, and various other agencies involved in the entire planning process of the mission as to who will be getting the load, who will be loading the aircraft, the mission will be undertaken during what times of the day. So we were in close coordination with the defense attaché at Wuhan. All these things were coordinated, and we had a preliminary conference on the 14th where we thrashed out all the various issues to clear out any loopholes that we have in execution of the mission. And thereafter, again, we had another final conference on the 19th of Feb, where we updated ourselves on the progress of the task assigned to each and every member. What was amazing is the amount of synergy that we were able to achieve amongst the various agencies, and the way the mission was planned flawlessly and executed flawlessly, in spite of having so many people involved and having a number of new speed breakers, which obviously come up at during the execution process.
It's incredible what you're describing. We can only imagine it, the amount of coordination that is required. Captain Patnaik, the operation itself, now what many people would not know is that it had unique dual purpose there. And also, if you could talk about how much you and your crew, in terms of your duty cycles, were doing much more, even double of what you do under emergency levels.
Yeah, under normal duty periods, we have a duty cycle, and then we have an extended duty cycle. But however, during emergency measures by clearance, we are able to achieve a significant amount more. Now, the nuances in this mission was that we needed to fly to Wuhan non-stop and thereafter come back to India to Palam. And there was a significant amount of halt that is expected at Wuhan because of the limited ground handling facilities available there. The entire screening process which the passengers had to undergo before they could be allowed to embark the aircraft. So because of these limitations in the number of manpower that we had at Wuhan, the halt at Wuhan itself was about 5 hours. The flying time involved was about 6 hours to Wuhan and 7 hours on the way back. So all these, when they got together, including the embarkation and disembarkation process, it went up to 25, 26 hours, which is a significant amount of extended duty cycle. So we were able to execute it by carrying 2 sets of crew. And the most tasking thing about this part was the coordination and the practice that we could do earlier before this mission itself. And we had prepared ourselves for this particular extended duty cycles by taking adequate rest before we undertook this mission.
And also the dual role, Group Captain, in terms of not only bringing back the Indian nationals and 36 international citizens, but also providing China with medical equipment.
Yeah, so I would like to bring out that apart from the normal crew duties that is involved, that is flying for the crew, the maintenance services for the ground crew, and the medical examination by the medical team, the entire team got together, and together they were able to achieve other tasks like offloading of the entire stuff that medical supplies that we had taken from here to China, because we wanted to do not have any much of an interaction with the people there at the Chinese, plus the uh, amount of limited ground handling capability available there. So the crew themselves, while wearing the biohazard kits, were able to offload entire
Wow.
medical supplies which were there in the aircraft, and thereafter the seats themselves were reconfigured by the crew so that the aircraft can be rapidly changed from a cargo carrying version into a passenger carrying version. So this entire process took us about 2 to 3 hours, in which we were able to offload the supplies and reconfigure the aircraft, and thereafter get on with the embarkation of the passengers.
That's usually that procedure of offloading by the crew itself is unusual, but it's in this case was deemed necessary so that there was not any contact with the Chinese personnel, right?
Exactly. But we had practiced for that, and we knew that this is something that we would expect. So because we had practiced, we were able to execute it flawlessly.
And when you're talking about offloading all that equipment while wearing your bio kits, your hazmat kits, incredible just to think about that itself. So, what precautions were you taking so that the crew, of course, primarily, and then the individuals that you were getting on board uh, would not spread corona?
Since we were flying into the epicenter of the mission, at epicenter of the corona outbreak at that time, and this was one of the first missions that Indian Air Force undertook towards this coronavirus outbreak. So there were a number of questions and curiosity which the people, the crew and the medical team had. However, in close discussion with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and the Director General Armed Forces Medical Services, we were able to thrash out as to understanding about the virus, the process of communication, the process of transmission of the virus, and all other things, and what are the necessary precautions that need to be undertaken to prevent contracting the virus. So once we had understood all that, we were able to have a demonstration of wearing the personal protective gear, that is the biohazard kit, the various nuances of operation. And thereafter, we practiced in the aircraft wearing the kit and handling the equipment using the kit. So that way, we were comfortable while we were doing this execute. Yes, but it was a tasking effort for being in the biohazard kit for long durations of time.
Just out of curiosity, how was communication happening when people were wearing these bio kits?
Uh, that's a fantastic point. Communication itself was the most important part of this entire mission. So we had planned and innovated a new process in which we had an entire passenger briefing, which was prepared by us as to what the passengers are expected to do once they reach the aircraft. It was laid down with the help of diagrams and pathways as to they are supposed to enter the aircraft in the rear. There is a person will be standing with a thermal screener. They will be screened for the temperature. They will be given a mask, their food, the sanitizers, the uh, uh, air sickness bags, and everything else was laid out on the seats. And thereafter, each seat was numbered, and these passengers were already debriefed through a passenger briefing. They are expected to come here, sit on this seat, and thereafter the emergency procedures. That is, in case somebody is not feeling well, in case somebody is showing symptoms, somebody wants to use the washroom. All these items were laid down in detail so that there was minimal interaction and there is no need for briefing because we have limited use of the public address system while we are wearing the masks. So all these things were
So,
laid out, and therefore the passengers could move seamlessly and sit on the seats and fly through the mission.
so undoubtedly there was medical personnel also in your crew.
Yes, there were medical personnel who were from the 11 Air Force Hospital, and they were the most significant part of this mission, where they could screen the passengers and thereafter allow brief them initially as to what is expected of them during the flight, what are the various facilities that we have en route, what are they supposed to do when they show some symptoms, and various others. So they were the doctors on board who could get these people's make these people get these people at ease because they were coming from a significantly stressed environment.
Talking about the stress levels among the passengers themselves, any personal experiences you have of how they came on board? They would have obviously been screened by the Chinese itself before coming on board, but they must have been extremely grateful once they actually got onto technically Indian soil, even though it's an
Yeah.
aircraft.
So, like in any HADR missions, the satisfaction of the Indian nationals when they are evacuated, the smile on their faces, the kind of relief that we can see, that is the prize that we get, and that is the significant morale booster for us. So, in this mission also, since they were there at the airport about 4 to 5 hours in advance, going through a number of screening processes, it was always playing on their mind whether they finally would be going back home or not. So once they entered the aircraft, it was kind of a relief for them, and we told them that don't worry, now you're home. Once you have entered the Indian Air Force aircraft, you are home, and please be at ease. And so they were really happy. People were clapping. There were families with small kids who were very relieved. You could see the smiles on their faces, and that is the biggest reward in any such mission: is seeing the happiness, the satisfaction, and the smiles of these passengers.
And you're saying the satisfaction would have come to your crew, the whole crew itself. Tell us a little bit more. You said there were two sets of crews that you had to take there because of the extraordinary flying time and the whole operation time, which is more than 24 hours.
Yes, so we were carrying two sets of crew because we also had to play with carrying limited crew because we didn't want a huge amount of crew to be exposed to this biohazard risk. So we were carrying four pilots who would be flying in rotation in two sets for the entire mission, 12 hours, 12 hours each. So that way we could break up the duty cycle into two sets and distribute the flying amongst all the four pilots that we had.
And you were mentioning about food and even the washroom, the loo that the passengers, it's not really catering for so many people. The Globemaster doesn't really cater. How did that happen?
Yeah, so this again, as I said, was a unique flight in terms of the innovation that we had to bring about. We are normally used to carry passengers in a passenger modification, but we also had to have certain medical precautions in place while carrying the passengers. So, in close consultation with the Director General Armed Forces Medical Services and the Ministry of Health, we were able to formulate a certain procedures that we need to execute in flight during the mission. This involved having an isolation area in the aircraft where we had about 15 seats which were isolated for any passengers who might show symptoms en route during the flight. So we didn't want them to transmit the virus to the other passengers sitting nearby. So the idea was that he or she could be sitting in the isolation seat, isolation part. Also, we were able to carry air transportable galley and lavatory which included two separate washrooms so that we have a separate washroom for the passengers and a separate washroom which was designated as a isolation washroom so that any passenger who shows symptoms is moved to the isolation pallet and then he uses the isolation washroom. So these were all
So
the precautions that we could execute in coordination with the ministry and in coordination with the health services. These were the changes that we brought about in the aircraft to facilitate this mission.
and in terms of your team, there was no spreading of the virus as such after they came in and they were checked up over a period of time, I presume.
Yeah, so we were after the completion of the mission, we had taken all the precautions, and thereafter, all the crew members were moved to a quarantine facility where we were under quarantine for a period of 14 days. Uh, since unlike a 747 or unlike the Air India, there is no upper deck or lower deck, so the
Mm-hmm.
crew is in close proximity, and the same air is being circulated, and more or less the entire crew is in close proximity with the passengers. So the likelihood of transmission of the virus was slightly on the higher side while using a C-17. So we enforced that there would be no home quarantine, but there would be quarantine for all the personnel for a compulsory period of 14 days, where we would be having the test, the swab test done for testing for the virus. And thankfully, we were all negative, and we could come out clean.
Now, you yourself have what I believe over 5,000 hours of flying on the C-17 Globemaster. You've been involved in so many HADR operations in the past as well. What are the key takeaways, Group Captain Patnaik, from this one?
If you ask me, the most and important, most primary and the most pivotal part of any HADR mission is the planning that goes into it. And in this mission, especially, I would like to bring out that it was because of the coordination meetings that we could have in time and the various agencies being present in these coordination meetings, the Ministry of External Affairs, Air India, Delhi International Airport, the Ministry of Health, and various other agencies of the Indian Air Force and the Army who were present in that particular coordination meeting. And face to face, once we talked, we were able to thrash out various issues. All the duties were demarcated clearly, and all the tasks assigned were given a completion date. So, more or less, this was the amazing synergy and the kind of seamless working of the entire uh, team, which consisted of various agencies which could help us efficiently execute this mission. So planning and practice is what is pivotal to the execution of a good HATR.
Captain Patnaik, really appreciate you sharing you and your team's operation, extremely successful operation. And all I can say is the whole country salutes you, your team, and everyone who was involved in this. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Amitabh. Thank you so much. And I would like to say that the Indian Air Force is regularly practicing for these kind of missions, and we are trained to do this. And anytime we are called upon to do any kind of mission which involves HATR, it is really a matter of pride for us, and we will be happily executing such missions in the future also. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir. Thanks.